On today's episode, we're talking Social Security, but from kind of a different perspective and a different angle. We're going to look at how Social Security claiming strategies differ in diverse family situations. So some more unique situations like a single income household, or maybe how a dual income household coordinates its strategies, or what about blended families and those kinds of things. So we're going to talk a little bit about those different kinds of situations, how it might impact your Social Security, all coming up on today's episode. Walter Storholt back with Frank Oliver, financial advisor based in Colorado, for another great episode of the Time Blueprint podcast. And Frank, we're talking Social Security here.
Everybody's favorite topic.
Yeah, I know, but it is, right? I mean, people have a lot of questions about
Yep,
Social Security. And I don't think realize this sometimes, but there's a lot of different directions you can take Social Security and depending on your situation. And so what we want to look at is some of these maybe slightly more unique situations, or just if you happen to fall in this category, how does that change how you look or view Social Security a little bit? So let's start with a zoomed out view, the broad view. Why do different family dynamics impact Social Security claiming strategies?
Well, I think it depends a lot on longevity of your family. I think it depends on your spending habits. I think it depends on the larger benefits. You know, some spouses have a great variance in the level of their benefits. I think it depends on if you've been divorced. You know, it depends on if you're a surviving spouse. So the
government's put in different options for us in place depending on all those little factors.
Absolutely.
So the flexibility is a good thing.
Flexibility is amazing. Yeah, and Social Security is a very complex benefit to understand. And I think what I've done several times in my career, several thousand times, is really tried to optimize and maximize everybody's Social Security benefit and squeeze every single nickel I could out of the Social Security system based on a life expectancy based on age 90. And I hope I'm addressing the question here correctly, or the topic correctly. But what I've realized is that, everybody's ideals are different with Social Security, right? So I would get a lot of kickback on trying to maximize Social Security. And what I realized is, so what we're going to do is look at, spousal benefits, survivor benefits, divorce benefits, maximizing using the 8% delayed credit increase every year. And then once we have created the ideal Social Security scenario from a monetary standpoint, then what we'll do is kind of take your lifestyle into consideration. Because some people have told me, a lot of people have told me, Frank, I don't care how much money I have at 90. I really don't. I want to enjoy my life a little bit more sooner. So, and again, addressing the topic correctly, there is a lot of flexibility built in there, and you want to make sure that you really do look at, which benefit do I delay, which benefit do I elect early. Do I have divorce benefits? Do I have survivor benefits? Just a lot of different components there.
Okay, good. So flexibility helps us make those good decisions. So it's nice that they don't just say, this is how Social Security is going to be. Deal with it. We get a few options to work with. Well, let's dive into some specific situations then. So let's say, what should primary earners in a single income household consider?
Well, I think the primary earner, obviously, that's the individual is going to have the larger benefit. In a lot of situations, not always, but in a lot of situations, it makes sense for the larger earner to delay those benefits.
This is like where you'll see someone maybe who's had a spouse that was a stay-at-home mom.
Correct.
And so they were the primary
kind of
earner.
my situation with my family. Exactly. But the Social Security has taken away some benefits such as file and suspend. Restricted application is being phased out. But the secondary or the junior earner can still piggyback on the primary earner's benefits, right? But they cannot do that until the primary earner elects today. So that's also something else that you have to look at is a primary earner has to elect for the secondary earner. If those benefits are less than 50% of the primary earner's benefits, then they can come in and get 50%, up to 50% of the primary earner's benefits. So you really want to look at when to elect that correctly. So if the primary earner actually delays till 70, that may be too long, because then the lower earner cannot elect those the spouse's benefits until the other spouse elects. So it's changed a little bit over time. I know that was kind of a complex answer to maybe a simple situation. But
if someone's a single income household, but also just a single household, does that change the equation at all? I guess you're just not thinking so much about the survivor benefits at that point, or
Yeah,
with the impact on the spouse because there isn't one.
Well, and you always want to think about the survivor benefits. And I think this is where it gets, just a little complicated because the longer the primary earner delays, that ultimately becomes the survivor benefits, right?
Okay.
But if the secondary earner maybe didn't work at all, they are eligible for up to 50% of the primary earner's benefits, right? So, but the primary earner has to elect before the secondary earner can get up to 50% of those benefits. So,
Gotcha.
Yeah. So,
But if the secondary earner doesn't exist because of a divorce or they're single at that
Got
point,
it.
does that matter does that influence then the decision-making process?
oh, well, I think if somebody has gone through a divorce or a death, or if they've just never been married, ultimately, again, it just comes down to budget, how much you've saved in your portfolio.
Okay.
And my answer is always delay as long as possible. Like if I'm sitting at a restaurant having a beer and a burger with somebody and they ask me when to elect Social Security, I'm like, you probably want to delay as long as possible. You're probably better off delaying till 70 than you are electing at 62. But ultimately, it comes back to a plan,
Yeah.
looking at what your assets are, when you're going to retire, what your budget is, and how delaying Social Security impacts that. Because if you delay Social Security too long and you're drawing down your assets, there's a point of no return where you draw those assets down far enough that they may not recover. It's always a balancing act, and it really takes some technology and some planning to put that into perspective.
Okay, makes sense. So my big takeaway is whether I'm a single income household or a dual income household, if I have a spouse, I really need to coordinate the strategy with their needs.
Absolutely.
If I don't have a spouse, then it just eliminates one variable, but there's still this whole equation that needs to happen for maximizing the potential and balancing it with all the other financial things I have going on in my life. Okay, very good. All right, what other special considerations maybe should blended families keep in mind? Because I know that's something that's more and more popular these days.
Well, on the blended family, it's interesting. We've actually had families decide not to get married because they want to take advantage of the divorce benefit, right?
So this is where an ex-spouse can claim on prior spouse's benefit.
And in this modern world that we live in, some people are actually taking that route where it's like, okay, I've been married before. I love you, but let's just keep everything separate and, we'll hang out together like we're married, but from a legal standpoint, we're not going to get married. And then I can qualify for a divorce benefit. I don't know if that's really the best direction to go because then you lose your married filing joint, tax status and all of that. You got to take that into consideration.
Sure. There's a lot of other variables to now throw into the mix.
Yeah, but from a blended family, let's say that there was a death, you do qualify for a survivor benefit. Okay. So that's definitely a consideration to take into consideration.
Yeah.
So
interesting. Yep. Wow. I would have never thought of that other one. I knew the thing where an ex-spouse could claim on the other's Social Security, but didn't think about that.
You can't remarry if you want the divorce benefit.
It undoes that benefit.
That's right. Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. I've read about their family maximum benefits. Is that an issue that you run into?
No, it typically is not. Yeah.
Okay. So not a huge concern for most folks. Okay. Very good. All right. Well, with all of these different complex scenarios in mind, is there one key piece of advice that you can give us? Not saying just delay to the end, like at the bar if you get that question, but when families do have questions about Social Security and trying to find something that aligns with their needs and goals, those kinds of things, what's the best thing that they can do?
Don't Google when to elect Social Security.
Okay.
We talk about this all the time, Walter, and honestly, it always comes back to the same thing. It comes back to a plan.
Yeah.
Right? What are my expenses? How much do I have in assets? How far down am I going to draw those assets the longer I delay Social Security? And everybody's situation is entirely different. One thing that I always try to bring to the table that when should I like Google Social Security does not answer. They don't know how much money you've saved.
Yeah.
They don't know what your tax bracket is. They don't know your expenses, and all of that comes into play. A couple things that people never really consider with Social Security is it's 100% income tax free. You're only taxed on Social Security benefits when you pull money from your other accounts.
That's right.
So if you elect Social Security early, and that benefit's going to be permanently reduced for the rest of your life, you're more reliant on your own portfolio to supplement that Social Security, permanently increasing that tax situation. Okay. So I think that's something a lot of people don't consider. And here's a big one. We just went through the biggest cost of living adjustment in my career in Social Security, right?
Okay.
So if your benefit's $1,000 a month, what's a 5%? Now the cost of living adjustment, I think was like 9%. What's a 9% cost of living adjustment on 1,000 versus 2,000 versus 3,000?
Oh,
that 9%
thousands of dollars. Yeah.
Absolutely. That cost of living adjustment, and it's permanent. right? Everybody receives the same percentage cost of living adjustment, but the money in your checking account is larger when the cost of living adjustment is on a bigger Social Security benefit. So the longer you delay, the bigger that cost of living adjustment is permanently for the rest of your life, every single year that they give you that cost of living adjustment. And it's a more tax-friendly benefit.
This trickle-down effect.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Much more than just, the break-even calculator that you get, on a Google search. So.
Yeah. Well, if you're looking for more resources when it comes to Social Security, I can point you in a good direction here. Frank has actually put together a guide called Social Security Simplified. Yep. Put yourself in control of your benefit. Even if it seems simple for your situation, there are still a lot of the complexities that Frank was just hitting on in today's episode that can impact retirement, and you can empower yourself a bit more with this guide. All you have to do if you want to get the guide is click the link in the description of today's episode. It'll take you to where you can download and read that report and that guide and learn some more essentials about Social Security. And then when you're ready, schedule that time to meet with Frank for a review of your plan. And you can do that in person in Colorado or from anywhere you are remotely online. So go to oliverassetmanagement.com to do that. And again, links, contact info, all that good stuff in the description of today's show. Thanks for the help, Frank.
Awesome. Thank you, Walter.
Yeah, there you go. Social Security Essentials on today's episode.
There we go.
We'll see you again next time on the Time Blueprint.
Thank you, everybody.
Investment advisory services offered through Creative One Wealth, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Oliver Asset Management and Creative One Wealth are unaffiliated entities. Licensed insurance professional. This information is for educational purposes only and should not be construed as advice or a recommendation for your specific circumstances. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. Insurance product guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing company. We are not affiliated with any government agency and do not provide tax or legal advice.